Let's go, Brandon. Didn't resist that. Welcome back. It's America Under Distress, America Under Siege. Thanks for putting up with this video being a day late. But the topic of this video is extremely disturbing. It's actually the dark side of Fort Detrick and the dark side of USAMRIID. And I'll also be going over some of the operations that the CIA was funded through the Marshall Plan, which I introduced last time. I'll be showing you a 1952 video of how what's biological warfare, what you should know about. And this was put out in 1952, actually during the Korean War. I just put this out here for one reason. It says, we went through the pandemic in 2020. Do you see any similarities with that? Remember, this video was 1952. There's no TV. Everything was through the radio, pretty much. TV, actually television was invented, but most people didn't have TVs in their houses. Hardly any at all. It was just barely invented. The form of it was barely invented. And then the rest of this video is about the dark side of USAMRIID, the projects that were funded. CIA funded some of them, all of them, and towards the end of it. And some of the controversies for USAMRIID and Fort Detrick, and then I'll go from there. So the first video here is what you should know about biological warfare. This was created in 1952. Be back soon.
As a nation, we are justly the people who produce these where they live.
It is an old video.
In event of wars, may attempt to destroy or disable our people and our production by striking directly at the civilian population. Denied the products of our farms and factories, we could not wage war on any front. We can be attacked in spite of our excellent defenses. Attacks may be made in many ways, with bombs or with biological weapons. This might be one form of biological warfare. But you may have heard.
There's a new poison. 1 ounce can kill all the people in the United States.
Germ warfare can wipe out an entire city.
Nothing could be further from the truth.
Biological warfare? What do they expect me to do about it? It's not my headache.
You're wrong. You had better find out the facts about biological warfare, or BW. It can be aimed at you in your home, or at work, at your food crop, your livestock. Biological weapons can be divided into 3 groups: germs, toxins, and plant growth regulators. Some germs cause cholera, others cause typhoid fever, plague, and such diseases. Toxins are special poisons produced by other germs. They do the harm in diseases like food poisoning and diphtheria. Special plant growth regulators can destroy food crops, just as weed killer can destroy weeds. The public health nurse and the many other members of our public health system have been fighting nature's biological attacks for years. We have proved that our health and medical systems check the spread of infectious diseases. Our livestock and crops are guarded by a nationwide network of federal, state, and local agencies and experts. Government regulations assure the purity of many food products. But BW attacks can be made in spite of our health safety systems. Aerosols containing disease germs could be used. These aerosols could be spread over large areas. Submarines could release aerosols near coastal cities. Specially designed germ-carrying bombs could be dropped. Enemy agents could contaminate the city water supply. How can we protect ourselves from BW attacks? Keep yourself and your family clean. Don't help germs by making things easy for them. Germs have trouble living in clean places. Enroll in a Red Cross home nursing course. Then if sickness does come to you, you'll know what to do. Always report sickness promptly.
And doctor, Mary's temperature is over 100.
Radio.
Good morning. Here's the news. Civil Defense Headquarters announced today that the sharp increase in the number of cases of illness during the last few days have led authorities to suspect that a biological warfare attack may have taken place. As yet, the cause of this outbreak has not been identified. Civil Defense Health Authorities recommend that you should take the following precautions.
If such an announcement is made in your city, don't give way to fear. Just remember that scientists would already be working to control the outbreak. Probably some of the people in your neighborhood would become sick. Reports of the disease would start pouring into health and medical authorities. The number and location of cases would be plotted on a map of the area. Scientists would go to work immediately to identify the cause of the disease. Meanwhile, the outbreak would take on a definite pattern. There are important things you can do in your home if you are told a biological warfare attack has taken place. Be careful what you eat and drink. Canned and bottled goods are safe, but scrub them before opening. Packaged foods in cupboards and refrigerators are probably not contaminated. Boil or cook all exposed food before eating. Water used for drinking or washing after an attack must be boiled. Wash all contaminated garments
Look at
thoroughly
that
to
old
remove
washing
germs or
machine. Jesus, oh.
If your doctor recommends sending a member of your family to the hospital, cooperate. Local health and medical authorities would distribute instructions so that the outbreak of the disease could be controlled. Follow instructions closely.
Do you see any
If you
phones?
are called
No.
upon for a blood sample, don't hesitate. Blood samples would be extremely important in helping the scientists identify the germs or poisons. Authorities would identify the cause of the disease as soon as possible. The recovery of those already sick would be speeded up with the use of modern drugs. Mass inoculations might be necessary to keep the disease from spreading. This would require the cooperation of everyone. Remember, BW attacks food crops, livestock, and people. Our health and medical systems are the foundations of our defense against biological warfare. Our food supply is guarded by a nationwide network of federal, state, and local agencies and experts. If we are attacked with biological warfare, health and medical authorities will tell you what to do so that the disease could be brought under control. Cooperate with the authorities. Above all, don't listen to scare talk, rumors, or myths. Get a copy of this official booklet at the first opportunity. Read it and remember it.
I say I remember that in our house.
Successfully combat
I actually do
biological
remember that
warfare.
book.
When I was doing research for this show and some other shows, I found that, and I just felt that I needed to put that out there, especially after 2020. We're almost in 2022. I thought that was so interesting because of what we just went through, and as we're still going through the pandemic. Do you see any similarities to last year? I did, and also I saw a lot of other things in there too that I'm going to let you decide for yourself. Okay, but the biggest things I saw, or I didn't see, there was no cell phones, 52. There was no TVs. Technology was so not the way it is today because information is disseminated so easily over cell phones and technology, the TVs, the movies, all over the place, that you can get a lot of misinformation. So I just felt that was a nostalgic look at what it would look like in those days. And since I'm a history teacher, I just had to do that. Let's get down to business, which is the dark history of Fort Detrick and USAMRIID. A lot of the research and development of biological and chemical agents came from these two facilities, which are actually in the same lineage. Camp Detrick, Fort Detrick, Frederick Field, to USAMRIID, and all of the other plans to do research like that, but that's the head, the U.S. Army Research and Military Infectious Disease Organization. I'm going to give you a short little history. Here we go. From 1931 to 1943. It was originally called Frederick Field or Frederick Airfield, named after Frederick L. Detrick, a World War I pilot, a flight surgeon. Louis Detrick, and I have a picture on there as well. At Frederick Field or Fort Detrick, 146th Observation Squadron of the 29th Division of the Maryland National Guard was there. They participated in World War II. Also at that place was the 2nd Bombardment Squadron of the 8th Air Force. They also participated in World War II of bombing German sites during World War II. In 1943, a Division of Defenses Against Biological Threat was formed. From 1943 to 1945, $3 million was invested in the labs and the resources around this area, Fort Detrick, eventually called USAMRIID, and also pilot plants, which I'll talk about later. At that time, there was 85 officers, 373 enlisted, and then they added 80 WACs, Women's Auxiliary Corps, and 2 officers to command the 80 WACs. In 1945, at its peak, right at the end of World War II, the camp, or Fort Detrick, had 240 officers, 1,530 enlisted, and that's including the WACs. Okay, Camp Detrick, or Fort Detrick, from 1943 to 1945. The USBWL, United States Biological Weapons Lab, was basically formed, research into weaponizing the biological and chemical weapons to use as defensive and offensive. Okay, this was overseen by a big pharma person named George W. Merck. Merck Pharmaceuticals. Okay, you ever heard of those? The site, it was picked because it was remote, but it was also close to several areas that was in high importance. One of them was Edgewood Arsenal, which was a focal point for U.S. chemical warfare research and where they stored a lot of these weapons. Also, it was close by Washington, D.C., Joint Chiefs of Staff as well, and also the 21st Signal Corps, which I'll talk about later. All at the same time, Army's Chemical Warfare Service Division was responsible for the oversight, research and development, and implementation of these weapons. Everybody's heard of the Manhattan Project. The Manhattan Project was the one that found the A-bomb. It had the same level of security. Nobody knew what was going on at Camp Detrick or Fort Detrick, or eventually USAMRIID. But during those times, in the 40s and the 50s, nobody knew what was going on there. If they did, they wouldn't have moved there because it was extremely secret. Same level as the A-bomb and Manhattan Project, like I said. 1946 to 1955, it exploded or blossomed, as I put down. There was a lot of facilities built to do the research for these weapons. One of them that has probably the most infamous name is Building 470. Building 470 had other names of Anthrax Tower. There was testing there for pharmaceuticals, but mainly they were trying to aerosol, the video of the spray, aerosolization of anthrax, and also bubonic plague and other ones as well. Its nickname was Fort Doom. Okay. By the end of World War II, there was over 5,000 anthrax spores weaponized at the end of World War II, and they were stored at Edgewood Arsenal. That's why I put, had they been disposed of in the promo video. Here's your Operation Paperclip tie-in, because all these videos I'm doing is Operation Paperclip changed the way we thought. The mentality of post-World War II. Before World War II, we were isolationists. We didn't want to get involved in any of this crap. We wanted to stay out of other people's business. After World War II, we were no longer isolationists. We were the leaders of the free world, and we still are in a sense, but in a sense, okay? These 1,600 scientists from Paperclip were aircraft design, missile technologies, and biological warfare. I already sent one video, which is at Operation Paperclip. I'm going to redo that video because I looked at it a couple times, and my desire to change it because I just want to introduce one sector of Operation Paperclip, cover that sector, talk about the main ones of that, to be more tight focused on what I'm trying to get across. And the JIOA, which was part of the Operation Paperclip that I already put out, Joint Intelligence, basically, organization that canceled or concealed their backgrounds, even the Nuremberg trials. The United States General Accounting Office from 1940 to 1971 later decided between this time of 1940 to 1974, hundreds of thousands of human subjects were subjected to hazardous chemicals, carcinogens. Some of them volunteered and some of them did not volunteer. And even some of the ones that did volunteer, I found a plethora of information that they didn't tell them the real truth of what they were volunteering for. In a lot of cases, they were just trying to say, we're trying to cure the common cold, but they were giving them CS gas. That's definitely not trying to cure the common cold. Okay, and they also have a tie-in with what is called Unit 731. In the next video about the evil scientist, I will cover Dr. Shiri Issue. He was the director of Unit 731, which was basically the Japanese version of his Camp Frederick, Camp Dare, or Fort Frederick, and USAMRIID. They did some unbelievable things, and they weaponized things like fleas, ticks, ants, lice, mosquitoes as carriers. So there was a tie-in there. And I'll tell you in the next video, but I'm going to just tell you now, the one who ran it was Dr. Shiri Issue, was granted clemency, wasn't prosecuted by Douglas MacArthur. That's one of the things I found out when I was doing the research for this. 1950, approximately, developed the countermeasures offensive medical defense program. Countermeasures, in other words, not just offensive, more engaged with using it as a weapon. This is Fort Detrick of 1956 and to the present. It became a permanent resident to the Maryland area. Nowadays, you know it's right there, you see it, and everybody pretty much in that area knows exactly what's going on. It has an international reputation, both positive and a lot of it's negative as well. In 1959, the Army Strategic Communication Command was set there. The 21st Signal Brigade was set there and actually communicated with the White House and the Joint Chiefs of Staff. That's why it was so important. So, and it had such high security. But on Veterans Day, 11/11/1969, Nixon decided to ask the Senate at the time to ratify the 1925 Geneva Protocols prohibiting chemical and biological weapons. On 11/25 that same year, Nixon declared outlawing offensive and biological research, renamed the bio unit from Fort Detrick to USAMRIID. But get this. In the next video, I'll talk about some of the operations that was funded through Operation Paperclip and the CIA, which was funded through the Marshall Plan from 1948 to 1952. Okay, 5% of that budget started all these front companies and started a lot of funding through that. And every single budget after that had funding through the CIA. A lot of people don't know that, but basically that's where a lot of their funding came from. Okay, but this is 69. No, Agent Orange, Agent White, all done by Operation Paperclip scientists that were defoliants that destroyed crops, food supplies. They were still used as a weapon. So in 69, when he declared it, we're not going to do it no more, they were still using it later during Vietnam. Okay, now 56 to the present. There are some of the former labs that are on Fort Detrick or USAMRIID. There's still signs Fort Detrick. There's still signs USAMRIID there too. But basically, some of these organizations were transferred to civilian organizations as a show of faith that they were actually getting away from that type of research. One of them is they transferred some of the functions to the United States Department of Health and Human Resources. I didn't know that until I did the research on that. The National Cancer Research and Development Center, or the National Center Institute at Frederick, 1971. I found out during the research of the show, the National Cancer Institute at Fort Detrick is part of the NAIA, and the director of the NAIA is Dr. Fauci. They're a part of the same umbrella organization, which is Bethesda, Maryland, which is not too far from this area. So basically, Dr. Fauci, even though he came in after this 1971, he came in this time frame of the 80s and the 90s, he knows exactly the ties those organizations had. He's a director of the NAIA, so he knows the past and the history of what his organizations have done, all the good stuff and all the bad stuff. In 1989, USAMRIID, now it's called USAMRIID, actually identified what is called the Ebola virus. The Ebola virus is a really nasty hemorrhagic fever that I'll send out videos of that, and there's going to be disclaimers on that too. Showed up. The spores of the Ebola virus under a microscope when they found all these monkeys are dying at this research lab in Reston, Virginia. It was Ebola. It's the same one that showed up in the Congo and in the 80s. This has 70 to a 90% death rate. It bleeds you out from the inside. You don't touch these. Extremely contagious. It's part of the BO4 labs, which is centrifuge, hazmat suits, internal air things. You don't walk in there. You got to be totally sealed in those suits. You have to have an own air supply unit on your back when you go into these areas, because these are extremely lethal. I'm pretty sure that COVID-19 in its pure form is in BO4. I have to check on that. And this was in the suburbs of Washington, D.C. It scares the crap out of people. I read the book. The book was written by, it's called Hot Zone. It was written by Robert Preston, which is also a researcher at this area. And also, the original Ebola virus and the World Health Organization was in the mid-70s. I don't remember when I was going to high school, but it came out at that time. That had a 90% death rate. That is scary. When I started getting into all this stuff when I was going to college, it was unbelievable. If I realized that when I was going to high school, I probably would have tried to do that stuff, because that stuff was so fascinating. I mean, it's also scary as heck. A couple controversies I'll cover. There's a lot more than what I'm going to say here. One of the researchers, Frank Olson, he died unexpectedly. He was an experienced research technician at Fort Detrick during the 80s and 90s. Get this, a KGB disinformation agent told to the press, claimed that HIV was created at Fort Detrick, created by the U.S. to attack where it showed up the most and worst was actually Africa. And there's actually what's called in the old days, maybe it's still there, AIDS corridor is basically an area in Africa. It's almost like a boomerang that all these AIDS cases were popping up. And it was accused by this KGB agent, this disinformation agent, that was caused by Fort Detrick, was created there. During 2001, right after George Bush, the son, came into power, there was a case of a lot of anthrax letters, with anthrax in the letter, and to basically contaminate and try to hurt people in the United States. The USAMRIID was asked to investigate, but once the FBI asked USAMRIID to investigate, they started investigating USAMRIID because all the tricky stuff that went on there, but it was identified through USAMRIID. Also, there's ties into present day COVID-19. When this came out, everybody was blaming Wuhan. And that's where it came from. Most sources, what they're saying now, even Fauci in front of the Senate said, it's probably likely a leak from the Wuhan lab. I don't trust anything that guy says, because now I know all this stuff about a lot of this stuff. They don't tell you the truth, even though he's under oath in the United States Senate. I don't believe any of these people anymore, because they've shown me with all the research that I've been doing, they don't tell you the truth. They never tell you the truth. The CGTV was saying, which is a communist China-run media agency, and some other Chinese run that are controlled by the CCP, Communist China, say that SARS, COVID-19 2, came from USAMRIID, not Wuhan. I'm debating whether or not to send that video out just so you can see it, but I don't think I will. I'm going to try something else, and I'm also going to try to send out a video from Unit 731, but Unit 731 happened in China. And most of the information about Fort Detrick ties that I found out here for this show, and the next show that's coming out, The Evil Scientists, comes from them. And I don't want to be a party to misinformation from a communist country. I don't think, I'm going to try to find some other sources to show you those things about Unit 731, because the conspiracy that has started at Fort Detrick and USAMRIID to infect the world, I just don't believe that. They were just trying to send misinformation about COVID-19, but I don't know. That's that one. Okay, that's a brief history of USAMRIID and Fort Detrick. There's a lot more history there. Keep looking it up if you want. You want to find out more information. There is so much information on this topic. It blew me away. The Operation Paperclip one was the space industry tied with one industry. This industry of biological weapons has spurred all over the place. And this is the next things I'm going to tell you is the reason why. Remember in the Marshall Plan, 5% of the funding to the CIA was from the Marshall Plan, and every year after that the CIA gets funnel money in many projects. Also, they set up those front companies, like I said, from 48 to 52, and they kept adding more, and they kept adding more, and they kept making money for these projects. Here is about 10 or 12 projects, just 10 or 12 of them, and there's a lot more. One of them they spent money on was called Operation Kitty, Operation Acoustic Kitty. They spent $20 million on a spy cat, okay? It was sitting out in the field in its testing areas, and it got run over by a taxi. They put sophisticated equipment on a cat. If anybody's ever owned a cat, cats don't listen to you anyway. Dogs are much more easy to get along with, they listen to you, but cats don't do what they tell you to do, because they just do whatever they want anyway. But they spent $20 million on an acoustic kitty. Operation Mockingbird. This is not a chemical warfare program. This was an information control and information dissemination program. This had some ties to Operation Paperclip, it had a lot of ties to Paperclip, but it also had ties with Fort Detrick because they wanted you to get the information the way they wanted to do it. Okay, why? It had 3,000 agents, collaborators to influence the control of media due to infiltration in the media from the Soviets, then the CCP, and then the North Koreans. They actually had writers from Newsweek, Time Magazine, New York Times, and 25 major publications, and they even tried to overthrow governments. The reason why I say this again, the information coming from Fort Detrick and USAMRIID was sanitized. Everything that comes out of that place and goes to the media is controlled, okay? And Operation Mockingjay, I just said another Mockingjays from Hunger Games. Mockingbird is a program to fight the infiltration efforts by the Soviets and the Chinese. If you think they're not out there, you're deluding yourself, okay? Next, Operation Gold. This really doesn't have any ties to USAMRIID and this show, but I wanted to put it out there as well. It was a project to hack into the Soviet phone lines in headquarters in Eastern Berlin. The CIA and MI6 dug tunnels and tried to hack in the phone lines. Operation Northwoods. This does have a tie to USAMRIID and the other projects as well. In short, the government would commit a series of acts of terror, violence, riots, bombings in the United States. They would do it to fellow Americans, and they would blame it on the communists. They even had a plan to blame the communists on a failed Apollo launch when Alan Shepard went up. So basically, if it went down, we would blame the Soviets so we could attack them. This was all a rumor. This was just, oh, it's a conspiracy theory. It's wrong. Don't listen to conspiracy theories. But they found it in declassified documents, but actually JFK turned it down. So don't just sit there and say you're a conspiracy theorist and don't believe it. I'm showing you it's documented proof, even from the government, that denies some of it still, that it happened. Don't be a sheep. Research it yourself. It's there. It's right underneath your nose. Don't sit there and believe Pelosi, Schumer, McConnell, Biden, or anybody of these morons. Because they're not going to tell you the whole truth. They're not. Especially the ones that have been there forever. Operation Project Pigeon. I don't think this has any ties in any USAMRIID and Fort Detrick. They trained pigeons in a missile and pigeons to recognize targets. What? Operation Midnight Climax. This does have a tie to the U.S. Fort Detrick and USAMRIID. Operation Midnight Climax was a CIA program with several Paperclip members. Part of it used drugs, sex, prostitution, safe houses all across the country to manipulate people, the use of drugs such as acid, LSD, and blackmail. In the next show, The Evil Scientists, there's a couple of those scientists are directly tied to Operation Midnight Climax. Actually, Midnight Climax was a sub-project of MK Ultra. During the 50s and the 60s, 1954, the CIA safe houses, which is Midnight Climax, in San Francisco, Mill Valley, California, and New York City, used LSD to non-consent and no volunteers. Okay? This is another one. Operation Stargate. This doesn't have any ties to USAMRIID and things like that, but they spent $20 million in the 1970s and the 1990s in a blanket program of psychics to investigate future events. In other words, they had psychic spies. 20 million. Try to this is going to happen. Operation Mongoose, direct ties to Paperclip and Fort Detrick. Huge program to overthrow Castro, destroy crops through chemicals. Use of drugs to overthrow Castro. MK Ultra things was I'll talk to next. Those were to destroy crops, chemicals. Agent Orange, Agent White. Several Paperclip scientists were there. They were used for Operation Mongoose. MK Ultra was next, but I'm going to jump to the Bay of Pigs. Bay of Pigs was a CIA operation to overthrow Kennedy with Mongoose, with the misinformation, with Mockingbird, try to overthrow Kennedy. Okay, it did not go through because they were not given the CIA was not given the full go-ahead, and Kennedy didn't like what was going on. They got massacred on the beach. Bay of Pigs. MK Ultra. This was a truly massive, destructive, fiendish program of torture, mind control, interrogation on private citizens, soldiers with no consent, LSD, shock therapy. Some Paperclip scientists were there. MK Ultra is still widely classified because there's so much there, but it has been declassified, so we know it's true. There's a lot of evidence that it was true, so it's no longer a conspiracy theory. Hundreds of experiments on Americans to have access to potential of LSD to gather information to control your minds, to physical torture. Allen Dulles in 1953 started the beginnings of that program, which is actually Operation Artichoke. And the reason why it was set up is they feared the Soviet Union and also the CCP and North Korea are using these techniques of capturing soldiers against us. So they wanted to be up to snuff with this. Over 150 human different experiments. Some of them volunteered, most of them didn't. Psychedelic drugs, which is acid and LSD, paralytic drugs, electroshock therapy. Again, these are across the United States, but it expanded as Ultra kept going. They were done at universities, hospitals, and prisons during this time in the U.S. and Canada. Remember in 1969, they were supposed to stop banned chemical weapons. They were still using them and using weapons, chemical weapons against Vietnam. They were using them all over the place in other battleground areas to fight communists, the Red Scare. It was deceased in 1973, MK Ultra. The predecessor to Ultra was actually Operation or Project Artichoke. August 20th, 1951. For the Office of Scientific Intelligence, the goal of the person involved is to coerce the person captured to assassinate someone that they wanted to. That was the goal of Operation Artichoke, and it morphed into Operation MK Ultra, and actually Operation MK Naomi, which is to specifically have a base for the CIA to provide a base of covert operations of an arsenal, probably Edgewood, which is not too far from USAMRIID and Fort Detrick, of lethal capacity to gather intelligence, TSD, which is a Technical Service Division, use of agents against animals, crops, which is Operation Mongoose. Those are some of the projects that I researched for you. There's a lot more. That's why I called it the dark side of Fort Detrick and the dark side of USAMRIID. And I have to give, even all the negative things I said in this video, I have to say they were trying to protect this country. Just to, that's what they say. But do I agree with all the tests they did on human subjects? No. Not a chance. This is all done through the guise of national security and the guise of protecting the United States. They will lie to you, they will steal from you, they will destroy your life in the guise of national security. Okay? So when it comes down to it, if you take anything from this, always question authority, always say, where is the money coming from? Every single budget, every single infrastructure bill, every single budget that goes through Congress, read what's in it, or at least cover the main points of it. Try to read it. And see, that's one of the reasons I dislike government huge bills, is because I'd rather them send through one bill at a time so that you can actually understand what's in the bill. They dump all these other projects into a bill and they don't tell you what's in it. And that's just a way they get things through. They highlight, oh, a stimulus. This is going to help people, and it does. But they hide nasty stuff that's in these bills. They do. If you look at the infrastructure bill, there's things in there that have nothing to do with infrastructure. I've already checked. The other ones before it, things to other countries. I've already checked. Okay? Question authority. And I have to say this from personal observation. Get rid of these career politicians. Just get rid of them. They've been there too long. They're so used to a corrupt system, they think it's the way it should be, and it's not. A personal note before I close this, two things. Support all the things in the descriptions, the scholarships, Wounded Warrior Project, useful charts, all those things that eventually, once I get monetized for the views, I will send the fund these things, mainly the 2 scholarships. That's how I keep donating every single month to that. And those are 2 going very well. There's 2 observations that I'll get to next. I remember in the Marine Corps, I had NBC training. You had several times. In other words, a unit or a platoon would go out, they drop smoke, and you'd have to put on your gas mask on. We also had to go through in boot camp the gas chamber. If you didn't put your mask on right, you're crying from CS gas. No, not CS gas. That's deadly. But the gas that gets into your eyes is an irritant. So if you're crying and if you don't get your mask on too quickly, you get hurt. We all go through that. So when it comes down to it, I will be sending out some videos that will have a disclaimer on it. Viewer discretion advised. I'm going to send you out some things that cover CS gas testing that has animals in it. If you don't want to watch it, don't, because it's pretty graphic. Because one of the things I have to say to you, the more information that you have that's real, that hits home, better. Even if it irritates you to see that. We just found out that some of the projects that Dr. Fauci was running killed beagles. That's in the news just the other day. Fauci was being called out by Rand Paul, senator. Okay. And they should be called out. Okay? So these videos, if you don't want to watch them, one of them is Zyklon B, which is the gas that was created by IG Farben that killed it was a gas that mechanized all the gas chambers during the Holocaust. That was of Operation Paperclip, member that co-founded Zyklon B. founded sarin gas, founded taboon gas. All were tested at Fort Detrick and USAMRIID, okay? So check it out. I'll see you later. I need to save this video and then put out a couple other ones today, and hopefully tomorrow I'll get you the evil scientists of USAMRIID and Fort Detrick. Have a good day. Bye.